Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order, the City Council meeting for Monday, March 13, 2023. Could we have a roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Black?
Here.
Councilmember Derringer?
Here.
Councilmember Piper is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Mersch?
Here.
And Mayor Wilson.
Here. And at this time, I'd like to call up Greg Willis, who is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand for Pledge Allegiance, face the flag, put your right hand over your heart, ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Greg. And Greg, before you leave,
Yeah.
I'd like to present you with a Rolling Hills pin. It's not as good as a merit badge, but I hope you can find some use for it. Thank you very much.
Will you face this way? Oh, that's
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, that takes us to number 4, presentations and proclamations, which I believe we have none. Well, I just did a proclamation, I guess. Approve the order of agenda. I would like to ask, let's see, I'm hoping we'll have a visitor here to discuss item 14A, so I'd like to move that up to after item 7, but if he's not here, possibly after item 8. Any objection to that? Any other requests for a change of order?
I just was wondering if we have any members of the public for item 14B, the storm.
Is anybody planning on speaking on 14B, storm impacts to the community? Yes? Okay, could we move that up also to after consent calendar? Any rejection? Okay, so,
Now all the people who are thinking it was late on the thing, on the agenda, it'll already be gone, and
okay. All the changes requested? All in favor of the agenda as presented with the changes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. That takes us to public comment on non-agenda
Blue folder items first.
folder items.
The item.
second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item passes. Public comment on non-agenda items. Please. Yeah, have a seat.
All right, good evening, members of the City Council and Mayor Wilson. It's great to be here. I just wanted to introduce myself initially. My name is Jonathan Butler. I'm a relatively new resident of the City of Rolling Hills living on Portuguese Bend Road. But I really wanted to introduce myself as the newest member of the Palos Verdes Library District Board of Trustees. There was no election this past fall because we had 3 candidates for 3 seats. And so the county, by acclamation, installed the 3 of us. That's why you didn't see my name on the ballot. I just wanted to, besides introducing myself to the council, I wanted to bring up 2 interesting programs that I thought the council would may have already heard about. But on April 6th, at the Peninsula Center Library, we'll be opening the Teen Annex. I would say it's much anticipated. We've been talking about it for a really long time. I was over there this afternoon touring the space, and it's going to be a really cool hangout for teenagers and others. So that will be April 6th from 4 to 6 p.m. We'll have a grand opening event. And then further into the future, June 17th, we have the Doors Open Peninsula event, and that's going to happen in Malaga Cove. It's actually happening, it's the centennial celebration of what happened in 1923, which was the first promotional gathering of potential buyers of residential properties here on the PV Peninsula. So that's going to be happening on June 17th, which is actually 100 years to the day of that initial opening. And again, that's called Doors Open Peninsula. The library staff are overseeing that and organizing a very nice event. So I just wanted to share those things with you, and that's all I have. Thanks.
Jonathan, congratulations to your appointment. Welcome to the city. I know you've been here for, what, a year and a half now?
Almost.
Spent a little bit of time
A little bit.
on the construction of your home, and it looks beautiful, so thank you.
Could I ask a question? What time is the event on June 17th?
I don't have that.
Oh, okay.
Is it okay if I email that to you
Yeah,
later?
absolutely, thank you. Thank you for the information.
Okay, any other public comment on non-agenda? Seeing none?
I just, do you want me to read
Oh, I'm
this-
sorry,
this
yes,
letter?
there was one other item.
All right, this is a comment from Krista Hawkins, Dear Council and Traffic Commission. From a near lifetime of familiarity with the roads and trails and rolling hills, I can say from experience that the volume of traffic and speeding motorists has never been worse. I cannot walk across Crest Road to get my mail without being sure to look both ways to ensure that I am not the victim of some motorist speeding into or exiting the city. I appreciate your service on the Traffic Commission. However, gauged by traffic conditions in this city, you need to do something other than mailing newsletter reminders to residents to mind their speed and encourage their guests and service providers to do the same. Assuming Councilman Wilson continues to chair the Traffic Commission, may I take this opportunity to remind him of his recent re-election campaign promises, specifically relating to safety on our roads and trails. The residents have right to expect your promises to be kept. As a matter of community interest, kindly read this letter at the next council meeting.
So we've done that, and I am still the chair of the Traffic Commission, and I am aware of the problem with speeding motorists in Rolling Hills, and I am continuing to work with the Sheriff's Department to mitigate that problem. As a matter of fact, last week, during a meeting with the Palos Verdes, is it Safety?
It was, yeah, the regional law.
Regional Law Committee, Lieutenant White, who's the interim commander of the sheriff's station, made a commitment to other cities, but I also extracted the same commitment from him for Rolling Hills to provide more resources for our city, particularly Crest, which is where the most rampant speeding happens. I walk Crest a few times a week, and I know there's speeding going on. Not every car, certainly, but there's enough to create a traffic or a safety concern. By the way, Christian, I don't think you were on that meeting, but I asked him specifically at the last quarter how many hours of supplemental traffic enforcement they provided to us. He didn't know. He's supposed to get back to me.
He's researching that right now, and I think he'll have it to me tomorrow.
Okay, well, I wish I could report that now, but it'll have to wait for 2 weeks. But we do have a program where we pay the Sheriff's Department for supplemental traffic enforcement. Typically, they write citations for speeding and stop sign violations. The enforcement number of citations written in the last quarter of last year, fourth quarter of '22, it wasn't great. They've explained to us that they've been suffering from being understaffed for a while now, but anyway, it is something that I'm following up on and addressing, and I recognize the problem. So I just wanted to respond to the letter. Okay, let's move on to consent calendar. What is the will of the council?
I would move consent calendar.
Is there a second?
I would second it, other than was a minor correction on the minutes just as to the spelling of a word. And I guess we have to get that in, otherwise it wouldn't be corrected.
Okay, what is the,
The word is on the last page of the minutes.
which
and
number is it?
It's, well, it's
8?
item number 8C.
C, thank you.
Yes, minutes, 8C, the last page, and it was just the second paragraph, it was saying points citied as opposed to the points cited, and so I just to take out the I. So with
Last
that-
paragraph?
No, the second paragraph on the last page. So page 13 of our packet,
Okay.
and the second paragraph, it should be cited instead of city, so
Oh,
just take
yeah.
out an I.
I see it, okay.
So with that correction, I would second.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay, so with the correction to the minutes, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
New business.
All right, well, we need to go to 14. We don't, our speaker for 14A isn't here, so I'm going to hold that, but we can go to 14B now. The storm impacts the community. presentation from Mayor Tim?
Mayor Wilson, Christian will be giving the presentation on
Okay.
the 12A.
On what?
Oh, I'm sorry.
14.
You know what? You guys moved the agenda around. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, was there a staff presentation?
On 14B,
Yes.
there is an outline of chain of events that took place on the weekend of February 24th, but this item was asked for by Mayor Pro Tem Mersch, and I
Right.
thought Mayor Pro Tem Mersch
Well,
could.
that's fine. I just want to know if there's a staff report first, and then she could go, but if not, then Leah, please.
It says on here that the recommendation is to receive a presentation. I don't really have much of a presentation. What I was hoping that we would be able to do is hear from members of the audience, have a discussion amongst us, just kind of a quick review of what happened. The Johns Canyon people are very aware of what happened because it impacted them, but some of the people in the other areas of the city weren't as much impacted, not as aware of everything that went on. And we've had lessons learned. The mayor met with board of directors member Ann Smith. Elaine has been working with Kristen. Elaine has done a tremendous amount of outreach. We've met with residents at Johns Canyon. There's a lot of information that's been exchanged, and I was just hoping that we could have a quick discussion about it and observations from the public. And I felt that we had several residents that were here at the last meeting, and we didn't really, because it was a non-agenda item, there wasn't really as robust a discussion of it as I think most of us would have liked to have had, because it was a very impactful event. And I think that members of the community felt that as a body that we didn't care or weren't interested, and that certainly isn't what we're trying to do. And I think sometimes actions speak louder than words. Should I have said more or done more at the meeting 2 weeks ago? Perhaps I should have, but by the next morning, things that did not require the council to give direction on were already in place by both the city and working on at the association. So this is trying to follow the process of what has to go through to have an open discussion. So I'm anxious to hear from the public and the members of the council.
I certainly got something to report myself on this, but would you like to give your comment now?
That's fine, yeah, let's just go, Deborah and I will just make a comment here. if you don't mind.
Right,
Go ahead, Deborah.
okay. So I'm Deborah Schrader, if you don't know me, and Marion Bisco, and we're part of the leadership team for the block captains. So we feel like we want to make sure we're being responsible with the community and letting you know what our concerns are, because we represent a large part of the community. I attended, and Marion also attended, and as well Marita Gerarti attended the meeting that the fire department held. Chief Bennett from the fire department came and spoke about what had happened and answered questions from the group there. There were about, 30 people there. It was quite a good turnout of residents from Johns Canyon, as well as people who were around that community. So we were very happy with the response from the fire department, telling us, what they had done wrong by not marking the tree that had fallen. There was some discussion about Southern California Edison not responding quick enough. Of course, everything was chaos that night, as it is in a disaster. So we're not blaming them for not responding fast enough, but there are some lessons we can learn. and be better at notifying the community, or especially the particular street. We have a lot of streets in Rolling Hills that don't have any other access to get in or out of their community if a big tree falls. So we need it taken care of quickly. So we're asking, I think, for the council to be proactive about making sure we have the things set up for communication with the residents, and for making sure we have all those contacts with the utilities to keep us apprised of what's going on. It's very worrisome if you have a disaster, which it's inevitable. We will have future disasters, whether it's a flood, fire, tree, earthquake. And that's why we are the people who think about all those things. So,
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to really thank Elaine. She did a yeoman's job of getting everything get together.
absolutely.
I mean, and then also meeting with the fire department. And we do have a follow-up with the Assistant Chief Bennett to really talk more about the, when they start having the inspections, which are going to be starting in June, and to make sure that we cover all bases, not only just the ones that are on the around the house at 550, 200 feet, but also to look at the all the easement areas too. So that's going to be important that that this happens, because when I talked to one of the captains over at Station 53, this is about a month and a half ago, and I asked him about, well, you know, we're going to, and this had just come out, we had just received, and like everybody here who lives here, received their notice, and they hadn't even received the notice. So I asked them about the 5-foot clearance and so on and so forth. And he says, basically, we're going to go easy on it because we have to write up everybody in the community. And so as far as I know, the 5-foot is still wishy-washy for, you know, for this year. But it's going to happen that people are going to have to really clear that. And so, and the sooner everybody gets around to doing that, that would be, of course, make it easier for the next year when they really do enforce it. And then of course, we're just going to be continuing also with our canyon management. And we do have that set up for at least every 2 months. One of the forestry department will be coming and doing some canyon management. But now we have big trees, and we have lots of water, and the roots things are going to be a little unstable, so that's what we're really concerned about, you know, more of those trees coming down at who knows what time. Oh, one other thing I should also mention, we did talk about the Schultz gates. Maybe you might want to comment on that more.
Yeah, sure. It was kind of comical, actually. The residents were sitting in a group, and the fire department's addressing folks, and then the subject of Schultz Gate came up, and I was talking as Mr. Schultz wasn't there, but he happened to attend the meeting. And so as I went on, he says, "I'm Schultz, I'm here." So it was really quite comical. But Mr. Schultz was very generous. He said, for the first time I've heard directly from Mr. Schultz, that he is open to having Johns Canyon residents use his property as a way to reach Crenshaw Boulevard. His property is quite big, so it's very difficult. Along with that, there are 3 gates on his property to reach from Johns Canyon to Crenshaw Boulevard. So what he is going to do on his own is to work to modify the gates, 3 of them, to allow the fire department to be able to open them up. Additionally, he'll put these bot dots, and these are like the blue dots that identify where fire hydrants are, on his property to kind of guide people to Crenshaw because you could get lost in there. So Mr. Schultz was very generous. He said that he'll follow up with me as soon as his improvements are made, and that I will have the first responders down there kind of taking a look and see if there's any other improvements to be made.
Yeah, we appreciate, Elaine taking care of that and talking with him. And just as a community member, I would urge our community to make sure that Mr. Schultz is somehow compensated or helped to cover those things, because that is a huge advantage that he is willing to give us an egress point from his property.
Now, I don't know, I'll go to the city attorney on this. Is this something that the city could fund?
So-
Or partially fund or participate? I mean, what is our level of participation that would be?
Correct, yeah. So the only prohibition on the use of city funds would, of course, be the gift of public funds. In this instance, creating an egress and, you know, basically a route out in the case of an emergency. From where I sit tonight, that undoubtedly qualifies as a public purpose. So, yes, legally it would be permitted. Of course, it would be up to you all what the form and substance of that contribution, if at all,
And
entails.
what about an agreement, if any, or if so, a type of agreement could we have as a city with him as a private landowner to allow access? I mean, would that be on an informal basis, or could we enter into some kind of, be an easement or something, I would guess?
Well, so the easement would likely go to the neighboring property owners, not to the city, unless he wanted to, I guess, yeah, I mean, there could be something worked out that if he wanted to give us the city, but then we would have to maintain it, insure it, and all of that stuff.
So don't get me wrong, I completely support
Yeah.
what you're talking about here, and I don't think anybody's opposed to it. Just trying to figure out the role that the city plays in this type of an arrangement, because it's, first of all, we're not a traditional city with streets and, you know, curbs and gutters and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, getting past that, to have an agreement with a private landowner to allow certain people access under certain conditions, it's just kind of,
Okay.
you know, baffling how we approach this. I want to, believe me, I absolutely want to. I just need to figure out how the city can participate in this process, whether financially or otherwise.
You know, Mayor Wilson, I think 2 weeks ago when the subject matter came up, I think we talked about Schultz Gate and Schultz Access. And I reported that the first responders really advised against the city for having some sort of formalized agreement with the private property owner to ask the residents, the community as a whole, to utilize that access, because it's private property. But if the Schultz wanted to have an agreement with the residents on Johns Canyon, which he said he would be willing to, that's something we can support. I do think that we've contributed funds to improvements or betterment for the community with a party that does the improvements for the city, but I don't think it necessarily requires us to have an agreement with the Schultz to provide access to the city as an entity, I think.
Okay, well, like I said, I'm supportive of the process, the final result of it. And I think we can facilitate, if not be direct participants in it. But anyway, I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I certainly would support, you know, some type of action that the city takes to push this forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for
ladies.
considering.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So I'd like to report on my meeting with,
Ann?
yeah, trying to think of her title. Board member Ann Smith and Kristen and Elaine. We talked about what happened that evening. And my final impression of the meeting was not particularly positive. I got the feeling, and Elaine can express her opinion too, but after the meeting was over, I felt like they thought they did a good job that night. And I'm not saying they didn't do a good job, but they did an adequate job, and that's all that could have been done. And there were restrictions, don't get me wrong, I understand, you know, we have to rely on Edison to disengage the power lines, we have to rely on a tree service to cut through a tree. There was a life-threatening accident that evening that really raised this whole issue up, but I was not, at the end of the meeting, I wasn't satisfied with the position they took, which was, you know, justification for everything that happened that they were responsible for. And towards the end of the meeting, I suggested that, well, one of the things I found out was they called either 6 or 8 tree services, I forget the number, before anyone would respond. And when that one tree service did respond, they were unable to perform the job that they were called out to do because of the live Edison wires. But it concerned me that they had to call so many different tree service companies before they got one that could come out. My thought on this, my suggestion was that if they didn't do it, then the city should contract directly with the tree service company. And I know that we don't have responsibility for trees, but that doesn't mean we can't, in an emergency, you know, try to mitigate the problem. But my thought was we should have one on call that would be available to us. You pick up the phone, they answer it, they come out within 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. We could come up with the format, but just having somebody on call, and I realize it would cost money to have somebody on call. I don't know how much that would be. I don't know if it's $50 or $500 and how much a month. I don't know any of this stuff. But I would like to explore the city having a vendor, a contractor, that would be available to come out. And I understand that night it might not have worked because with the live power lines, the tree service, even if we had one on call that came out, they might not have been able to do anything. On the other hand, if there was no live wires, they could have done something. And we wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't have had to make 8 calls. We would have had to make 1 call. And while the association's still dialing, you know, we would have had somebody out there to take care of the tree problem. So that was my thought on the matter. It wasn't highly supported, I don't think, by the members of the association that were there. I think they felt that their agreement with or their maintenance of the trees, the down trees, was adequate. I disagree with that, and anyway, I just wanted to bring that up to the council to see if there was any support in following through on that, and if not, then, you know, we'll leave it to the association, which is what I reminded the audience 2 weeks ago. It's not a city issue. There's, you know, and I felt bad saying that. I felt like we should have been, like you asked, we should have been more proactive in this. You know, even, you know, I didn't like the comments that I was getting about we're not doing anything. You know, that even that perception was really, I thought was reflected poorly on the city. And I don't think we should be in a situation or a position where people are making those comments and we can't really defend it because we weren't doing anything directly that night. We couldn't. But, you know, having a tree service, I think, would be one step in bringing to the public's attention that we are concerned, we are trying, we want to do something, and this may not seem like a lot, but at least it's something, because we couldn't stop the wind, you know, we couldn't stop the rain, but we could stop the street from being blocked, and maybe we could participate in the access to the Schultz property to some degree, but anyway, those are my thoughts, so I'll see what the other council members might think.
Are we closed on public comment?
Yeah, public comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there, please, Fred, come on up. Sure. Sorry. I didn't see your hand up earlier.
Okay, Alfred Visco, 15th Century. At the last board meeting, I made a couple comments, which I'm not hopefully going to repeat myself, but concerning the Schultz Gate, we've been trying to get that resolved, myself, Don Crocker, others, been trying to get that issue resolved for a long time. And what it took was, of course, a tree falling down, blocking everybody off, before suddenly, you know, cooperation appears to be happening. I disagree that, although I'm thankful that the Schultzes are more than willing to do what they're going to do, on their own dime. I'm thankful of that. They shouldn't be doing it on their own dime, by the way. But it shouldn't be just restricted to the Johns Canyon neighbors. I mean, what are you going to do when you have this access available and you can't get through the Crest Road gate for whatever reason, And that's your access from that part of the city out. Are you going to sit there and say, sorry, you don't live on Johns Canyon, turn around and go someplace else? That, to me, is a half measure. We have an opportunity here now to do it right, and that is to make it another egress and ingress, possibly by the fire department, basically another fire gate, if you will, if you want to call it that. That, you have to think this out, though. I keep hearing 3 gates, 2 gates. I don't know what's out there anymore. I thought it was just 2, now I just heard 3. I don't know. I don't care, okay? Whatever it is. You also have to be able to control that stoplight down down on Crenshaw Road at Silver Spur. So if you're going to be egressing out, you're going to need the sheriffs or somebody to be able to control that stoplight so you can get out and you don't back up a whole bunch of cars all the way back into the city. All right? So that's another issue that needs to be addressed. This has to be, if you're going to do it, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Okay? Let's make it another fire gate for the city. Let's do it right, work with the fire department and the sheriffs. Let's set up a protocol. How's it going to be opened? Who's going to open it? You know, is it going to be the fire department, or is it going to be the sheriffs, or is it going to be the gate guards with a cooperation, just like we're doing on the other fire gate, which I realize is the association's responsibility? Just makes more sense to me that you want to be consistent. So that's the Schultz Gate situation. And then the other comment I made at the last meeting is, when is Rolling Hills, and I'm using Rolling Hills generically, not the city, not the association, when is Rolling Hills going to get tired of having large vegetation along the roads, which, when they fall over, will block access? And you have to be scrambling around under emergency conditions, trying to get a tree company come out, trying to get Edison to turn off the power, trying to clear those trees to allow our residents to get out, or emergency help to get in, if, like in this one instant here where somebody did need medical care. When is Rolling Hills as a community going to get tired of that? And I disagree that the city council doesn't have the authority or the power. You could pass an ordinance which simply says you're not going to allow in a road easement association, whoever is responsible for those road easements, we're not going to longer allow you to have trees that are greater than 6 foot in height. So when they fall over, they just fall over and stay off the road. You could do that. You have the power to do that, appropriately following the correct protocol, of course. It's a safety issue. That's my issue on the trees. I'm so tired of hearing this about, after the fact emergency. Do it now, do it up front. And you should start with the worst trees, which are, in my humble opinion, eucalyptus, and then the pine, bringing me now to the pine tree on Cintring that had several branches fall and apparently fall into the power line right there. Several weeks before that happened, I went to Edison's website and lodged a complaint about that pine tree, because the power line goes right through that pine tree. I lodged a complaint. Surprisingly, I got a phone call back from Edison, and the response to me was, don't worry about it. We looked at it, it's not a problem. Well, obviously, it was a problem. And that was Edison's responsibility. It was their power line that went through a pine tree, which they should have taken down and should have taken care of. Now it's butchered, and it's in probably a worse shape than ever. Hopefully, from what I'm hearing, the association's going to go in and take it down. I hope that's the case. But I'm sure there's a lot more other areas out here where pressure can be put on Edison to do their job, since they refuse to do any undergrounding. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments? If not, I will bring it back to council. Any other comments from council members?
Since you were at the meeting with Rolling Hills Community Association, I take it they don't have any plans to get some larger tools that would be needed for their own crew to operate, to be able to cut through a tree that was the size of the one that fell on Johns Canyon.
I don't think that was discussed, Elaine, was it? About reinforcing their toolbox?
Firstly, I don't think we had talked about equipment as being a problem at all at our meeting. Secondly, you're right, I don't think we talked about whether if they're gonna bolster their equipment inventory to help that. American Arbor is a third-party entity. They're the ones who supply the manpower and equipment to address the tree issue. So I think to your question, it was more about whether if RATA was going to add to their repertoire of equipment. That wasn't discussed.
Well, it was reported, I think by Kristen, that, removing a tree, a fallen tree, the size of the one that fell, is no easy job. And it's dangerous with or without power lines. It's, chainsaws and heavy equipment, it's just not for the untrained. I'm not saying that the RHCA crew is not, but I think there might be a size limitation that they could handle internally. So there was no discussion about increasing the size of the number of equipment that they have now.
Can I just add one
Sure.
thing to that, and be not from the discussion, obviously, I wasn't there, that the mayor was with the board, but I do believe at the Johns Canyon meeting, the fire department made the comment that under normal circumstances, they have tools that can, they've got chainsaws, and they know how to, they could have cleared that street, except that when the tree that fell was very overgrown, and the way the power lines went through the tree, they couldn't cut around it. They couldn't see where the power lines were to be able to cut it. If that tree had been a maintained tree that would, laced and so forth, where they would have been able to see where the wires were, they would have been able to cut around it. So I think that the equipment is probably there, whether it's at the association or the fire department. It truly was on this one, the way the power lines went through this very overgrown tree. They just couldn't see it.
Okay, and so to that question, if the fire department could take out a tree that was large enough as the one on Johns Canyon, but for the power lines, then maybe that's the answer, rather than having, somebody on call. If they can take care of it, maybe is there a way to address the failure of SCE when there's an issue to have somebody on scene? Is there a subcontractor that we could contract with that could come out and turn off the power?
Turn off Edison power?
Or do something that would neutralize the wire in some way?
First of all, I think your comment about Edison's failure, I think Edison will maintain that at the time that they arrived on the scene, there was no life-threatening emergency. Whether it was an emergency or not doesn't mean it wasn't superseded by, from what I understand, another emergency that they left the scene to go to. I mean, there was a lot of things going on that night. I mean, I heard a huge number of trees fell. I don't know how many involved power lines, but they were scooting around just like the tree service was. They came, they left, they came back, that kind of thing. So I'm not saying that Edison didn't contribute to this, but it was one of those situations where, I mean, there's too many parties to point fingers at to find one conclusive party that caused the biggest failure. There was a lot of moving parts that night, is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know how, I can't imagine Edison allows somebody else to disengage their power. I've never heard of such a thing. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but that's a new concept to me. I don't know what else to say.
I guess
about
that was just a question I would have, whether there is somebody authorized, because what does Edison do if they run out of people for something? Do they have any other go-to service? That's all. I don't know.
That's a question worth asking, Lane. Could you ask Connie about that? If there is they have a backup source. I'm sure they have contractors. I see them coming in the city, from time to time.
My understanding, because I was a during that process, they said that they had contacted a subcontractor that came to the city. And that's the person that actually came back in there to restore the power on Johns Canyon. It was actually a subcontractor to SCE.
To restore the power? Yeah, but what about to, I'm not using the right, yeah, the disabled, there's a term, de-energized.
I'm not sure who came out there. I think it was around 1 or 2 o'clock, I think, when they came out there too, yeah.
They is, talking about Edison?
Edison, yeah. I'm not sure if that was Edison or a subcontractor
that's-
of Edison.
Well, I know they rely on subcontractors, I just don't know, you
Right.
know.
I'm just saying that we maybe could ask that question, and perhaps if it's a private company, we could contract with them. If for some reason Edison's not calling them, we could call them.
I'm
Or
pretty
what
sure I
is-
know the answer to that, but
No.
could you ask the question just?
Sure.
for-
My understanding with Edison is that they don't have anybody that's not on Edison payroll to touch their facilities.
Well, no, but I don't disagree with that, but would they allow a direct contact with us and say one of their authorized contractors to come out? I mean, if we called Edison and they were non-responsive, is there a backup number to call that, isn't that what you're asking?
Well, or someone that they have a contract with that is authorized by Edison
right.
to
No, okay,
turn off power, right?
right, so just,
My understanding is Edison contracts with providers that gets direction from Edison directly.
but that's what I
So,
assume. But if you would just ask Connie, if there's, you
I can
know,
ask.
If
I
we
can
could
ask.
go around in an emergency, is there an authorized contractor we could call to report the emergency if Edison is unable to respond in a timely manner?
I will ask.
Thank you. Jim, you have anything?
There's not much to add, and I actually disagree with you. I think it is Edison caused the problem, and we've been through it many times with Edison's. There's an awful lot of federal laws, state laws. We have very little that we can force Edison to do. That's just the bottom line. They have their own people, their own contractors, and they just don't respond. We can complain, but we can't do anything. We can't force them to do anything. And of course, you're not going to cut a tree when there's live wires, and you'd have to be an idiot to do that and actually ask someone to do it. That would be irresponsible on our part. If we can try to put some more pressure on Edison, that's great. I also disagree that the Schultz just probably weren't asked. They're very nice, generous people. I mean, my daughter had a key to their gate because she was in a raptor rescue group. So it's not like their gate's not being used, and they're not letting people do it. They are. And that Crenshaw light is not a problem, but someone had to ask them. And they've done a lot of stuff for the community. So I think they surely will. But I think it needs to be done in advance, and now he's been asked, and he said, yeah. But I also, to try to get them to do an easement across their property, there's no way I would do that if it was me. A legal easement, binding, you're giving up a piece of your property.
I wouldn't either.
Right, so, but I think having them doing it, they will. They're nice people.
Okay.
I just had a comment on your comment about the city possibly having a tree vendor on call. I actually think that, and it has nothing, nothing to do with whose responsibility it is or anything. I actually think that having the association, I think they're looking into doing something like that. And my guess is probably going to be American Arbor is always the one that responds the quickest. I think adding another party into the communication of all these moving pieces, Artie and the maintenance crew and the association they're the ones that are going to be triaging the tree issue. I really would not like to see the city get involved in that aspect of it. I think it's just adding another little cog that maybe we don't need. I think it might be smoother if it's kept over there. And that's not, again, not because I'm saying it's their responsibility. I'm just looking at it kind of strategically on a flow chart kind of thing. I think it would be smoother if it's all over there.
Okay, well, I was looking for some some way to respond to the residents who expressed their concern 2 weeks ago particularly about the city isn't doing anything, and that night we weren't doing anything because
Because there was a live wire. That's why we didn't, no one's gonna do anything with a live wire.
Okay, just to be clear, if we had an on-call tree service, and I said this a minute ago, I wasn't expecting them to go start cutting the tree.
Right.
That was a situation where having an on-call tree service was not going to benefit anything. I was talking about future incidents where there is not a live wire, yet not enough resources to address the problem, like the tree that crossed Crest. You know, that, there was no wires involved in that one, and that one, that Crest, although Crest wasn't an emergency as far as access, because you could turn around and go back the other way, you know, that still took several hours to address. So,
Major emergencies like a major earthquake or fire, there will be live wires. And it's gonna be Edison is gonna be the holdup, like they're always the holdup.
okay. Any other comments or discussion on this item before we move on? Seeing none, all right, thank you. So we'll go back now to, let's see. Yes, 12A, thank you. Which is accept bid proposal from EC Construction for emergency storm drain repairs and lining at or near 1 Middle Ridge Lane south to 3 Middle Ridge Lane north, adopt by resolution number 1327. Approving the emergency work, adopt by resolution number 1328, authorizing a budget modification of $450,742.50. Direct the city attorney to finalize a construction contract and authorize the city manager to execute and find the same exempt from CEQA.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. So as you see in the staff report, we clearly have all the background on this item. You know, the problems on Middle Ridge started last year during the winter season. We have done now 3 repairs to them. And as we have discussed in recent weeks, we have now 5 new sinkholes that have opened up on the easement adjacent to the Popovich property along Middle Ridge Lane South. Recently, you approved to have EC Construction go and re-video the line to ensure to recheck the amount of damage that was created. They did do that last Monday and were able to get us the video and their report in time for us to get it into this agenda package. So I will just kind of give you the highlights that are already in the report. These are observations and conclusions from the video that they took, that the storm drain line has extensive damage to the bottom of the pipe. More than 90% of the current system is missing at least 1 foot in width of the bottom of the pipe. The majority of the system contains a lot of debris and trash that has accumulated from the rain so far this year. All the debris needs to be cleaned out prior to any repairs or lining. If the debris is left inside, it will rip the lining and essentially make it useless. And anecdotally, I will say, having viewed the original Los Angeles County video and the new video, it was very clear that there was an enormous amount of debris that wasn't there previously. 3, the video crawler detected 3 areas where the existing 24-inch corrugated metal pipe had collapsed. Prior to lining, EC Construction will need to excavate, remove the collapsed CMP, and install a new stick, which is 20 linear feet of corrugated metal pipe. This is known as a point repair. So therefore, they're saying that there are 3 areas within that stretch that will require a replacement of the corrugated metal pipe before they do the lining.
Are any of those under a street?
No, the 24-inch does not go under the street, to my understanding. It is 18-inch on Middle Ridge Lane South, and I believe it may even be 36-inch under Middle Ridge Lane North. And then 4, once the trash and debris are cleaned from the line, the 3-point repairs are completed, and the void at the bottom of the pipe is filled with slurry and sandbags, as we discussed in a previous meeting as well. The entire system will be ready to be lined. Once those 4 items are performed, EC Construction believes that the cured-in-place pipe lining continues to be the most effective and efficient way for the city to move forward on the project. They came back with a revised estimate for the full 820 linear feet of the line for $391,950, and we are asking for approval of $450,742, which includes a 15% contingency to be able to do the complete restoration and fix of the entire line. If there's any questions, I'm happy to.
Questions from council members?
I do. So they did the video after our last meeting.
Correct.
But this, the bid, they have not adjusted the bid. This is the same bid that we were presented with in terms of the amount.
No, this is a new one.
It's new. So what was it before?
I would have to go back and look at the previous one.
So this is not the same amount that we were looking at?
No, if
from
you
the
remember,
last meeting.
if you remember the
It
last,
went up from the previous one, yeah.
so the bid at the last one, if you remember, it was also broken into 2 parts, right? Where they were unable to give you a hard number on what it would cost to do the filling in at the bottom with the sandbags and the slurry, you know, that they were gonna have to kind of do that on a day basis. He was trying to give you an idea when he changed that estimate with like, what could it be? You know, initially they were thinking like a 3 to 6 day, so he was trying to buffer that, and then there was the cost underneath that. It was 2 parts, right? And that was the lining. So this estimate here, now that they have been able to see exactly what they need to be done, is everything that I just pointed out in those 4 points given to us by him. And everything is line itemed as 7 detailed points here as to what the cost covers.
I have a general question about the pipe itself. Does it start out at a smaller diameter and get bigger as it goes?
No.
'Cause it seems like there's various,
There's 3 different sizes.
36.
There's an 18-inch pipe that goes on Middle Ridge Lane South. I think we have in here, if you look at this, this map here on page, what is it, 41? And if you are looking at that, at the very far right, there's a little blue area, right? That blue area is actually on just south of Mr. Popovich's driveway. But what happens is the line actually goes across the street there, so it transverses Middle Ridge Lane South. That pipe right there underneath Middle Ridge Lane South is an 18-inch pipe. Then it's a 24-inch pipe going all the way down along the easement until you get to the bottom. And then I believe, and I'm not an engineer, so the city manager can jump in at any time here. I believe that there is a small 36-inch portion that transverses Middle Ridge Lane north. And then it's back to a 24-inch corrugated metal pipe that goes from there all the way to where we did that recent fix on Hommick's property at 3 Middle Ridge Lane North in the fall, to the outfall pipe.
All right. Other questions? Okay, I'm gonna open up public comment. Seeing none, bring it back to council for discussion or a motion.
Well, I mean, I thought that there was, with the 2 portions, that it was similar to this price. I mean, it was up almost, seems like $300,000. Wasn't over 400,000, I don't believe, but it would have been helpful to have the history, because I know we were just looking at this the
Well,
last meeting.
The 400 is 391 plus a 15%.
Right.
Right, I
contingency.
know.
I would move 12A.
Okay, is there a second?
I'm sorry, what was the motion, Jim?
I would move 12A.
I second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We just spent 1/4 of our budget right there.
I know. And it gets better. That was the biggest.
That was the shortest discussion for that amount of money I've ever.
It was too painful to discuss.
Okay, 12B, consideration and approval to award a construction contract to AC Pros for the City Hall Heating, Ventilation, and Air Conditioning Project. for an amount of $188,750. Adopt by resolution number 1329, authorizing a budget modification of $200,625. Direct city attorney to finalize construction contract and authorize the city manager to execute and find the same exempt from CEQA.
Mayor Wilson and members of the council, staff did not plan to put all three items on this agenda. It just happened to happen that way, so I apologize for having to discuss lots of budget adjustments this evening. Item 12B has to do with the City Hall HVAC system. If you recall, this past summer, the AC was not working, and council subsequently allowed staff to hire an engineer who managed to find ways to make the project a repair project versus a brand-new system. So staff put out and advertised for bid based on the plans provided by SNK. And tonight, we're presenting the bids received. 3 bids were received from AC Pros, Bonaire Inc., Allison Mechanical Inc., and the lowest responsible bidder is AC Pros at $188,750. Staff added a contingency to the final amount, and so what we're asking for is a budget of $207,625 to move forward with this bid with AC Pros to repair City Hall's HVAC system.
Okay, questions for Elaine?
I just have one. Are we, and I'm sure you've looked at this, but I just want to make sure, because we've had some discussion about it, that whatever it is we're doing with the HVAC, we're not going to be doubly doing or spending any extra money when we do the ADA for the City Hall?
No, we're not, and I'm sure of it. SNK's design was actually sent over to Pacific Architecture, who had their MEP, or mechanical, electrical, plumbing, subconsultant vet the plan, so there's synergy between the two.
Thank you.
Any questions? I'd like to open it up for public comment. Seeing none, bring it back to council for a discussion or a motion.
Obscenely expensive.
That's a comment?
And I don't know that we,
Yes.
just obscenely expensive. I mean, I understand what these costs. I do this pretty often. This is obscene. I don't think we need to have a 15% contingency.
If we don't have the contingency, I guess we'd have to bring it back to
Right.
council for.
We would.
Okay. What part, if any, of this is budgeted?
None.
This is all coming out of reserve?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, well, if nobody else will make a motion.
I would make a motion that we, I want to word it right, approve as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll say second.
Okay.
No, it's a lot of expense. It would be nice to the next meeting to find out where we are on our reserves after this meeting. So,
Is there anything on the upcoming budget where that'll be discussed? I mean, the upcoming agenda?
There is a report out of the Finance Audit Budget Committee conversation from March 9th at the March 27th City Council meeting.
Will it include these last two items that we're about to?
No, it would just be a summary of the conversation we had, which was the committee's input on budget cuts in anticipation of the structural deficit for FY '23-24. But I do believe that we are reporting general fund reserve on a quarterly basis. So the next report will be in April, early April, to capture January, February, March.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
And this is for the full amount, the 205, not the 188?
Oh, sorry, didn't I clarify that?
You want the full, you want to add the contingency, you want the 207, not the 188?
Yes, for the full amount, I'm sorry, let me clarify that. I don't, because I would want the contingency in there instead of having to slow it up if we have some problems. I'm just hoping we don't have problems.
If you have money for them, they'll find a way
I
to
have
spend
no, I don't have the money, and this is very painful. That's,
Okay.
that's my
They'll
motion,
find-
that's my
They'll find a way to
motion.
get up to 207 if they know they can. All right.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me. Opposed?
No.
All right. Motion carries. Takes us to 12C. And who's presenting on that?
Wilson.
Okay.
Item 12C, and if you don't mind, I'll read the full title.
I'm sorry.
12C.
I'll do it. Consideration and approval to award a construction contract to Unlimited Environmental, Inc. for the demolition package for standby generator removal, waterproof removal, and electrical services project at an amount of $54,700, adopt by resolution number 1330, authorizing a budget modification of $60,170, direct the city attorney to finalize a construction contract, and authorize the city manager to execute and find the same exempt from CEQA.
Mayor Wilson. Just to recap about the standby generator removal project, recall in 2021, we hired Pacific Architecture to give us a memo on what to do with our non-working diesel standby generator. And as part of Pacific Architecture's plan to us, they started investigating a solar option. But in that package that they submitted to the city included a number of things. The solar battery combination option to replace the diesel standby generator, the demo plans to remove the diesel generator, and also to make sure that the shed is in working condition in the event that the city wants to reuse it for other purposes. So for this evening, the subject matter is about that removal package that Pacific Architecture put together. And staff had put it out and advertised for bid to remove the generator and some refurbishment of the shed, but received no bidders, and this was in December of 2021. So some time went by, and I think that 3 or 4 city council meetings ago, we started talking about how to replace the diesel standby generator, and then staff informed council that we're ready to go back out to see about interested parties in removing the generator. So we did so. At the same time, we put out the HVAC system. We thought that combining the bids together maybe would help bidders to come and see about both projects. And I think that that tactic worked because we had 2 interested parties. So Unlimited Environmental, Inc. submitted a bid, as well as Integrated Demolition and Remediation, Inc. Unlimited Environmental, Inc. is the lowest responsible bidder, submitting a bid at $54,700 to remove the existing diesel standby generator, as well as making some improvements to the shed. So again, like the last item, staff is requesting council approve the lowest and responsible bidder for the project. Similar to the previous project, we're also asking for a 10% contingency at $60,170.
Thank you. And just to clarify again, this comes out of reserves?
Yes.
Okay. Questions for Elaine?
I did. There was a response, thank you very much, the city manager, Jane, for the information that
Sure.
the estimate, engineer's estimate we got from Pacific Architecture for this particular project was $39,312, which the amount is higher than that. I don't know if you know why that is or have any, offer any opinion on that.
The engineers, the only The only comment I'll offer on that is the engineer's estimate was prepared in November of 2021. We're in 2023, and given the rate of inflation on all things across the board, my suspicion is that that is just that.
I guess the other thing, I mean, in terms of, which was part of the discussion I had with our city manager, is that if we do get an engineer's estimate, that, in her opinion, that by the law, we're required, if anybody asks about it, a contractor, to tell them what the engineer's estimate is. We directed her not to do on the one which one was the one we did?
HVAC, City Hall.
HVAC. We got actually an estimate lower than that, than what the engineer's estimate was. But apparently, according to our city attorney, that a city doesn't have to have an estimate. I mean, it may advise us as to how much it would cost, but once you have it, then according to public contract code, we have to provide the information to us. Is that right?
Councilmember Derringer, I just want to add, which I didn't talk about earlier in our conversation, but the bid relating to the standby generator project, we did not put in the engineer estimate in the bid.
Okay. So that's just something I think to advise us, maybe apparently some cities don't get estimates. They just let the market and put out the bid, just figuring out that, that competitors will bid it and so forth. But that's just something to put out here because of the fact that we normally do that, and then we end up having that cost plus the cost to get it done, but.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this right. If we do get an estimate, we have to disclose that?
Correct. That estimate would be a public record, so there would be nothing that we could shield it from. So if asked, we would have to say, yes, here it is.
But we don't have to present it. It could be available upon request, right? I mean, is there a difference there?
That's what we did on these last two bids.
But they did request, right?
Oh, they requested it?
Yes.
Okay. No, I get the fact that you can't withhold it, but.
And also, I just want to remind the council that for the HVAC in particular, before staff advertised for construction, we actually took the item and have council approve the design plus an engineering estimate. That's typically the package that comes from a consultant. So if they wanted to, they could just look up the agenda and find out the engineer's estimate.
You know, I see a lot of bids where it's way above the estimate, and then the body, whatever it is, the agency will just throw the whole thing out and start over again, rebid, re-estimate, not re-estimate, but
Re-advertise for construction bid.
Yeah, I guess, just start over again and hopefully it comes in closer to the estimate, or change the estimate to, to be more realistic, I guess. Okay.
And I think Mr. Donegan would tell you and advise you that you can do that here too.
Yeah, correct. That is always an option. You can reject all bids and start anew.
I have a question
Please, go ahead.
on that same vein, but don't we ask for kind of estimates from our consultants so that we have a ballpark figure of what we're talking about when it comes before us, so we're trying to decide? I mean,
Yes.
Isn't that why that's provided to us?
Yes. Typically, when you have a engineering team that puts a project together, the engineering estimate comes along with it. There's a plans, estimate, and the specs, which really directs the contractor how to do the work. And those are essential to a municipality because you want to be able to budget or see if you have enough budget this year to do the project or not.
But in this case, probably the biggest problem was, and the difference is that it was old, and we didn't go to the trouble and the expense to get a newer engineering team estimate.
Right. And there's also many factors, market, material cost, logistics you've heard, labor force. I mean, those all play into the part. And you could have an engineer estimate that was, and the way Pacific Architecture does it is that they actually shop their set of plans that they prepare with actual contractors and get a spread of costs. So the 39 and change that I quoted earlier for you from Pacific Architecture, they actually provide a range between 44, 43 to 29. That was the range they provided. it can really land anywhere.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Seeing none, bring it back to council for discussion or a motion.
See why we have to put contingencies on everything. We give you a bid, you take the bid.
That's your motion?
I would move the item minus the contingency, so 54,700.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it just where we can discuss it.
All right. Do you have something to
No,
discuss?
no, I
Oh,
mean, maybe Councilmember Black could further expound why on this particular one it would
All
be.
of them.
Wanted all of them.
I
want it all.
understand that, but we're dealing with this
Because
one
that's how
now,
you do
right?
bids, and that's how you do bids. I mean, you get a bid, you take the bid, you don't act, it's the staff adding on, it's not anybody else. And they say, oh, you might have to come back if there's a big problem. This has gone on for 4 years. If they have to come back for 2 weeks, it doesn't really matter, does it? And all of these things, I don't, you know, why? I mean, why? That's why. So
Well,
that's
I
why.
mean, it may make sense on something like this, which is not something like HVAC, where they're in the middle of the project and it's summertime, it's getting warm, you gotta get this project done. This
A
is
normal
one that's
HVAC would cost
not-
about $40,000 for this building.
okay, we have
Okay.
a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would consider trying one without the contingency and see what happens.
It makes
I
sense to
mean,
do it on a
is-
smaller.
I don't know if that's a dumb thing or not, but
People do construction every single day when they take a bid from somebody, and you don't instantly add 10 or 15% on your budget.
in my mind, I do anything I have done on my house, and I get a bid from somebody, because I know something's gonna come up, but that's just me, but I would,
That's you.
that's why I never do anything on my house.
All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. 12, no, I'm sorry. Well, this is what I was holding on the agenda, and now we're there, which is 14A. Discuss South Bay City's Council of Governments membership dues. It has me down here. Is there any staff discussion first? Or is it all staff or council driven?
Staff, well, Mayor Wilson, I will say that on a staff level, we study up on the South Bay COG Finance Committee's documentation on the proposed membership due increases and the different scenarios, and then try to find a methodology that would result in a more equitable membership distribution. And I think that in discussing with you, the scenario that is in the staff report is probably what staff came up with, trying to help this item.
Okay, so when I was at the COG meeting a week and a half ago, my first meeting, but the subject of the dues increases came up, and I commented that our council probably wasn't supportive in the continuing membership of the COG, based on a prior meeting, of if the dues that were being charged Rolling Hills were not reduced. So then the question came up, or the comment was made was, well, you're gonna have to provide us with a different method to calculate the dues to achieve your goal. And I was able to extract a bit of time. This was on Thursday before our last council meeting, so it couldn't even go on the agenda to discuss. So it's been about 2.5 weeks now since that meeting. And I asked for, I forget the date, but I think it's a week from today, is what the director of the COG said we needed to get back to her by that date with an alternate method of dues calculation. And if so, if we did that, then she would call for a special meeting of the COG to consider our request. So I don't know if she was actually expecting us to come up with a method, a formula, process, because as I tried to explain to her that night, our city is tiny relative to every other city that's a member. We're 25% of the population of the next closest city, which is Rolling Hills Estates, as far as population goes. Yet on a per capita basis, we're paying substantially more than any other city, by not even close, by a long shot. So, as I went through this thought process, I thought to myself, I don't really want to burden Elaine or our staff with trying to come up with some kind of a fancy method that exempts us or lowers our costs and leaves everybody else about the same. Because the fact is, whatever reduction we could get is just a tiny fraction of the budget that they're trying to achieve anyway. So I don't think it would be even noticed, frankly, by other cities. They might look at us and, be annoyed that we're trying to, lower our dues like compared to everybody else, but I don't really care about that. And again, I pointed out that our continuing membership in this organization was probably not going to be approved by our council unless there was some reduction. So I had a discussion with Elaine about this, and basically, and I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but basically, is that based on the discussion we had up there?
Yes. Maybe I can just
Yes,
cover it
please.
really quickly. To the left column states the membership city. To the right of that is the population, and this was put out by the COG a couple of years ago before COVID. And then the next column is percentage of population from the member city, and then square mile of each respective city. And then scenario 3 is what the COG is considering right now as the membership dues going forward in FY 23-24. And then the last column is taking scenario 3 as membership costs, dividing by the second column, which is the population that the COG previously provided. And so a couple of items highlighted is you can see at the very top, the city of Carson, if they were to pay the membership dues as proposed, then per capita, population-wise, they would be paying 36 cents per person. And going down to the bottom of the table, you can see Rolling Hills Estates, they would be paying $1.39 per person. And then you got the highlighted yellow line, which is Rolling Hills, and we would be paying $4.42 per person. Now, this is just based on population. There's many ways of identifying the unit cost here. You can do it by square mile, et cetera. So what Mayor Wilson and I talked about was taking the average of the lowest and the highest without Rolling Hills. So that would be the 36 cents per person, the $1.39 per person, and averaging that. And at the bottom of the page, you can see the average of that would be 87 cents per person. And if it was 87 cents per person, then Rolling Hills is,
Wait, I don't see it on the screen.
I probably have to scroll down. If it was 87 cents per person, then Mayor Wilson's proposed membership due for Rolling Hills, multiplying it by 1,939 people, that would be $1,694.44.
No, I don't think they're gonna go for that, and frankly, it would be hard for me to support that either. That's so far below what we've been paying, which is in the 6,000 range.
Yes, our membership dues have been about $6,700.
So I personally think that that's too high, and we could get below that. But, we could throw that out there for their consideration and certainly be rejected. But, I think we need to have some kind of a realistic figure in mind that what we want, and if they're not agreeable to it, then we may have to call their bluff. Based on the council's feeling. I know Bee had some comments she'd like to make on this. So-
Yes, I just wanted to point out in the blue packet, this is information that I requested when the COG was talking about the dues increase. They kept saying, this is the way it's been calculated, and I said, where are those calculations? I want to see them. And so they sent them to me, and this gives you a history, and I'm not going to go into everything, but essentially, if you go to the last page, which says page number 43, and it has this yellow highlighting area. This kind of tracks what they're basing it. They were basing it on the 2000 census population, and they decided to keep it at that because that's the marker they used from before. And they talked to the city managers, who then said, well, let's, rather than doing a whole new calculation and formula, let us just use the current one, but they needed reserves. They figured they need 100,000 reserves. So that's where you see for the yellow areas, where they added 20,000 per year during this time period for dues, and apportioned it among the cities according to their prior formula. And then that would give them a sufficient in the reserves, which they calculated as something they needed to do, that if the COG shut down, this is what the amount of money they would need to operate it for a period of several months if there was some emergency. So now what they're talking about, they're still dealing with the 2000 census. My suggestion had been, and I think it's still a good one, that we should equalize it with everyone. Why they're trying to base it. You see there in this pink section, they took, and I'm not even sure how they calculate, some number that they figured from the city budgets. Now the city, and they used it from the general fund, but every city's general fund is different. They've got, sometimes cities don't apportion into earmarked funds for certain things, so the general fund could be bigger or smaller, and there's things that are adjusted, but that was based on year 2000. Nothing's been changed since 2000 as far as what the formula is. Rather than a general fund component with population, I think it'd be simpler if we just went by the issues of what is the city's population and use the most recent. I did look up Department of Finance, which does it every year, and so the January 1st, 2022, which is the last time they tabulated, and that's the first sheet in your blue folder that's got some highlights. Rolling Hills, instead of being from, which is in our staff report, being a population of 1,939 in 2017, which is not consistent with the Department of Finance records for 2017 that I pulled off the web. But be that as it may, the Department of Finance is saying we only have 1,684 residents at this time as of January 1st, 2022. So I think if everyone was calculated based on a January 2022 population, we divided the amount of money that the COG wants, which you can see from their calculations in our, if that's contained on page 269 of your packet. What they're asking for under scenario 3 is $488,536 from dues. So if you divide the amount they want to achieve with scenario 3, divide up the number of residents for each city within the COG, then you can then calculate. For Rolling Hills, if we do that number, it's $795 for dues because of our, and so, whereas, and actually, Palos Verdes Estates would be half of what they're paying. Rolling Hills Estates would be like 1/3 of what they're paying. And some other cities would be slightly higher, some larger. What they have been doing, which is not really, I don't know where they got this, they've been treating the portions of LA County and the portions of LA City that are part of the COG, they're using the number that exists for the Torrance population. And I guess that's for ease of whatever, but you'll see that on the last page that they indicated that that's what they were using back then. But probably those entities could afford to pay more, I don't know. But if we're keeping with that same formula, but just using population, I think we should posit that because there's quite a few cities that would be less. Lawndale, Palos Verdes Estates, Rolling Hills Estates, our city, and I haven't looked at everybody else, but pretty much it's probably everybody has a lower population will be benefited if we just go by population. And and suggest that, and then we can offer as an alternative and say, but if everybody wants to keep with the formula, then we should at least take the highest and the lowest based on the January 2022 Department of Finance statistics for the population, which are verifiable on their website, and we'll pay that. But I think what we're supposed to do is come up with a formula for everyone. If we just come up with a formula for us, I think they're gonna reject it, and they're gonna say, we're not gonna have a meeting for that. We told you that you need to come up with an alternative formula, and they wouldn't consider this to be a formula for the entire dues structure. They would consider it to be an ask and not schedule a meeting for that.
So you're suggesting that we go back to them with a $795 dues
We
payment?
just say everyone should be based on population, and the criteria should be based on population as it exists with the Department of Finance from January 1st, 2022, which is the latest statistics. And then we'll have quite a few people who are going to be benefited from that. And Powell's Race Estates is very adamant, they want to do something about this. They're looking into
So
this.
the method that you've used to calculate will still result in the overall increase that they're looking for.
Yeah, it'll still make.
You're just taking their amount
correct.
divided it by total population.
Exactly.
And
I'm
you're
taking-
confident with these figures, because I see LA County is handwritten at 144,
I
433.
put that in there because that's the Torrance population for January 1st, 2022. So to the extent that they've used that methodology, I just added that in there because LA County, and you have in Department of Finance, they've taken the whole county. So there has to be a way of, I don't know how else, I'm sure there's a way in which LA County, the two supervisor districts could calculate how many people are in the spa or the portion that is redistricting, how many people are in there, but that would be probably a difficult process to figure out how many people are in the new redistricting for the portion that's in the COG.
Okay, just to be clear here, this is LA County, there's no portion of LA City that's within
LA
this?
City is the same, would be 144, 433, because they're using the Torrance City figures, that was their.
Wait, when you say they, who's they?
The COG. The COG, if you look at the blue folder item on the last page, they have in this fine print, note, LA City and county populations were calculated as being the same as Torrance. That's on the bottom left hand in the
sorry,
footnote
that
on the
wasn't-
last page of the blue folder.
Okay, so that's using their figures to.
Yeah, that's using their methodology. But then still getting us something that is across the board for everyone, so that there may be other cities that jump on board. So yeah, that would be something that would be fair and equitable. And if they say, no, we want to keep it the same, then we go to, well, alternatively, it should be whatever the, and I haven't calculated it for the highest, it may not be Carson, I mean, depending on what we do, but if you calculate whatever the highest would be for the highest number of population, which is probably Torrance or something, and then go down to the lowest, which is us, and pay the average, it's gonna be something different than what you posited, but it would be keeping with the same population statistics, which would be because we shouldn't stay with the census from 2000. I mean, that was what they have now.
Okay, the first part, I understand the methodology, the second part, I'm a little unclear about.
Okay, the methodology, meaning the Department of Finance figures from January 1st, 2022.
No, the method of calculation.
Okay, the method of calculation, I'm taking the amount of money that they want from scenario 3, which is $488,536. That's what they hope to achieve overall for dues from the entire COG cities.
Right, but this is what you referred to as an alternative.
Now, this would be the methodology, like, hey, for scenario 3, the amount of money that each city should pay for scenario 3 should be based on population. And then if you divide that amount per the number of citizens or in all of the COG cities, then you come up with the fact that it's think it's 0.472. And then, and so that would be the number of cents you add, and then to each member of the population.
Really trying to simplify this. The first method was just take the total amount divided by the total population. That comes, for Rolling Hills, it'd be $7.95.
Yes.
Okay. But I thought you,
4.472 times 1,684 residents equals $795.
but I thought I understood you to say if they don't accept that methodology, an alternative method would be,
The alternative would be whatever the highest dues-paying member would be from their population to us, then under the formula with using the current scenario, if they don't want to change the scenario, then we go to that, but we use it based on our population that is current.
so our
not the-
population times what number?
So if it, let's say you're saying, the
Or what
average
city, just-
between, let's say, okay, the average, what they're paying now, I calculated before that Carson was paying 28 cents per person, for their dues. But,
So use that number times our population?
no, okay, no, I'm just saying, no. What I'm saying is, we do the population straight across the board, that would be our change of formula, based on population. And we'll say, look, if you wanna stay with the current scenario, then, and not change the formulation, then at least you should change us, because we are the smallest city, and take our current population, 1,684, and then we would be in between the highest and the lowest, which is, like you were doing, but based on a population size that is accurate, not the 1,900 something, because we don't have 1,900 people according to our finance in our city today.
Okay, the population thing is, I've seen as low as the 1,600 number, I've seen as high as a 1,950 or something like that. There's different ways to calculate that, but irrespective of which population head count we use, times the average of the highest and lowest,
Well, do what you're doing
You know what,
now.
she wants to do it 47 cents per person, so everybody's pays from all cities, that's what it comes at. You wanna do it 87 cents per person by your highest and your lowest and split it in half. She said that's what she wants for her second way of doing it. So why are we going over it again? And it's her first choice, 47 based on the total population. Second choice, 87, which is what you wanted, based on the mean from what people are paying. Getting rid of the highest and lowest. I mean, let's go.
Public comment.
Comment, so that there can be a comment.
Real fast, just looking at what's up here, Alfred Biscup, I think I'd be pretty upset if I were Torrance, because I'm paying more than the city of Los Angeles, based on these numbers that I'm looking up here, on all the scenarios. And I understand what B is saying is that they counted the city of Los Angeles to be the same size and population as Torrance, and they also counted the county of Los Angeles to be the same size population as Torrance, if that's what I understood B was saying. So I mean, if I was the city of Torrance, I'd be really upset that the city of LA is
the
paying.
whole city that's part of this organization, it's a cutout.
Well, it's not the entire city of LA, just a,
No, it's
Cut out.
the part that's in the cog.
just part of the city of LA.
That's why the head counts reduced.
I see what you're saying. I'd still be upset about Torrance.
Any other public comment? Okay, back to the
I think
council.
you should push for it. I mean, just to make it equitable, right? If Williams, 800 people or 1,900 people, we should all, we should be, the way they do it is based on population to begin with. Somebody gets the right numbers and turns out we owe $700. I recognize they're probably not gonna go for it, but maybe if you combine that, you go talk to the other cities on the hill and show them the disparity of what they're paying, what they should be paying, maybe they gain with us. Maybe it's leverage.
Thank you. All right. Back to council for a motion or further discussion?
I just have a quick thing, and I appreciate all the work everybody's doing on how much per person and all that. I'm looking at it at an entirely different perspective. We deal with this every single time they go to change their dues. And every single time we're borderline, do we even want to be in the cog? I'm willing to pay a small amount of money to be a team player and be part of the cog. When it starts getting to be this amount of money, I look and I say, what does COG do for us in Rolling Hills? Most of the things COG does to me, and I was only only the representative for a year, but the things that I saw were, yes, some of the things they did benefited our residents because maybe they, when you leave to go to work, you leave Rolling Hills and you go on streets and things. But nevertheless, if you guys can figure out a way where it's less than $1,000 for this city, I would support that we would continue with COG. That's a decimal, that's a decimal point in the budget. That's not a huge deal. But other than that, I think we should decide whether or not we think COG, forget how you calculate it, what benefit do we get from it?
Well, if that is our alternative, obviously, that's what we're trying to do something with, let's make it equitable for everyone. They want a global system for dues. To me, population is the most fair way to do it. And so that would be our first posture, and then we can mention alternative. Alternatively, you make a special case for us, and one proposal would be taking the average between the highest and the low, but we have to find out what that highest and lowest is, because obviously we don't want to just be willy-nilly it has to apply to our current population.
COG hasn't spent as much time on Rolling Hills as we've spent on them tonight,
Absolutely.
on this.
Absolutely true. I agree with Leah 100%.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just
I was hoping John Cruikshank would be here tonight. He's the chair of the COG now, and he was, I'm sure, going to try to sell us the benefits of membership, and there are some. His comment at the last meeting was, of the budget, only 10%, the cities pay only 10% of the funds that's actually, I guess, achieved by the COG through grants. So, it's a 10 times your investment. Again, many of those items that the COG manages or addresses don't even apply here, such as transportation items. They may not apply here within the city, but like Leah said, they do, apply outside of the city. So I'm fine with the method of calculation that B came up with. If we want to, somebody would like to make a motion?
I would make a motion, and I'll try and say this the right way. I would make a motion that whatever calculation that you could come up with, if it's less than $1,000 to the city of Rolling Hills, that we would accept that calculation.
Well, the only thing is, I can't guarantee, that. I would
Then-
like to make it, let's make a motion that we do it proposed by population, where it's 0.472 per population,
Okay,
which would,
okay,
it would end up being.
Hold on. I'm going to ask for a second, and if we don't have a second, I'll.
Second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. I'm not sure that this is clear to staff, who will have to
Probably,
present this.
probably not. Can I modify my own?
Yes.
That if you can't come up with something that's under $1,000 for our dues, that we drop out of COG.
And I would second Leah's modification.
But we still need a method of calculation. Unless you're going to leave it to staff. No, I don't want to do that because I don't want misunderstandings or inconsistencies. Help me out here, Pat.
It was dues divided by population. That's what it
Okay,
came down to.
can we incorporate that into your motion?
Yes.
Okay, which would be, the method of calculation would be the total amount of the budget divided by the total population served would result in a cost of Rolling Hills of $795.
According to me, that comes to 47 cents per person. I have not double checked her math.
0.472.
47 cents, point two.
No, 0.472.
47 cents.
Yeah, 47 cents.
But as Madam Mayor Pro Tem, but your ultimate, it was $1,000, so.
Yes.
I guess in
Not to
theory.
exceed.
Yeah,
Not to exceed. Not to
Thank
exceed,
you,
yeah.
that's a better way to say it,
Right.
not to exceed.
Okay, are you comfortable with that, Elaine?
Yes, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Of course.
Okay.
Me too.
Here is a figure that was provided in your staff report. And take this column right here. It's comprised of the membership cities and their population. Let's assume that this column is correct. You would have a population of 1,017,441.
B saying that's based on a 2000 census.
Well, if you could just bear with me on the calculation. Okay. So that's the figure one figure we would use. The other figure we would use is that the COG is interested in scenario 3, which ultimately adds up to all the membership cities in the way that they're calculating the fees to be 488,536. So what I got from you as direction is to take this dollar amount, 488,536, divided by this total population here, assuming this is the population we're going to use. If we use a different population, whatever that total comes out to is the figure we use. Did I get that correct?
Well, it's not that population, it's the population that exists in the Department of Finance for each of the COG cities.
But how much does that differ from this, do you know?
It does.
How much overall of the,
I
at
didn't
a
go
million?
by line,
Just by rolling
but
hills.
you can check it out.
I'm sorry, before you get into what is the right population, I just want to confirm two figures. The scenario 3, which is a dollar figure that the COG wants to achieve, and a total population of the membership cities.
Correct.
Divide them together, that is a per unit, and then I take that per unit, multiply by whatever the population is of Rolling Hills. Did I get that correct?
Hard math, Elaine, you know that.
Yeah, but that population is subject to,
Right.
I mean, do we use Department of Finance 2,000, whatever that was?
We can talk about that next. I mean, we got the calculation out of the way, and I think everybody agrees with that. Okay. With respect to the population, what do you want to use? Staff can use any figure you like.
Don't we use 2020 census for elections? Doesn't everybody use the 10-year census for elections?
Yes, and so does the Department of Finance,
So
but
how come they shouldn't have the different number than the 2020 census?
they start there every 10 years, and then every year, apparently they get more updated data from the Census Bureau, is my understanding.
And they use other data too that kind of conforms to what is the actual number. So theirs has a little bit more refinement to it, and they also update it yearly, whereas we don't obviously have that for the census. So it's easy to use, plus they coordinate all the LA County cities in one thing, whereas if you go to the Census Bureau, you have to look for all the cities in the whole state to find the ones that belong to the COG.
Okay,
It's not-
if we're talking about a variance in population of about 300, I believe, from the 19 to the 1600 figure, is that right?
We're talking about, yeah, the difference
Okay,
between.
times 42 cents is $126.
47 cents.
That was,
40,
there was
47
.472.
cents.
300 times .47, $141.
Okay.
I don't think,
It's a rounding issue, I mean,
It's, yeah,
yeah.
200 bucks less than what you calculated, but, all I'm saying, because I did a .87 times 1,684 residents is 1,465.08.
yeah, we're not even talking about that.
That was his
That
thing.
was
You
the
were talking-
that was the, well.
That was the alternative,
That's
right?
not part of the motion.
That was part B, that's not even in the motion.
So let's,
Okay,
put
I
that
know, but
aside.
the motion is limited to 1,000, so that's a problem to the motion, that's all.
not, if you had 141 to the 795, which we calculated at the 1,600 population, it's still not over 1,000 though. That's what I'm saying, can we just,
It is, if you, well, all I'm saying, I agree for the total population version, but if we want to, I think we should also have an alternative that just benefits us. I
but
think
that's,
we need to
this
have.
is not part of the motion.
I understand that,
We
so
have a
that's why I'm going to
motion.
vote against this motion.
That's fine. Elaine, which do you feel is the more accurate and the most simplistic number to use for population?
From where I'm sitting, I think if you're making a proposal where there was going to be significant cuts to the Rolling Hills membership fees due, I would just use the population that the COG had been using. And I'm trying to calculate what that number looks like using 1939, which is the population they show here at that rate. That's $931, which would be under the $1,000 that Mayor Pro Tem Mersch proposed.
So
That would be the
we
simplest
can
way.
achieve her proposal limit
Using COGS numbers.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I don't want to, for 300 population, okay,
Where are you saying this is the COGS number?
it's on the screen.
But I mean, where did that,
That is from the COG from 2020 and the work that they did on the membership fee increase at that time.
Okay, we have.
276 in the binder.
I don't know, yeah, all I'm saying, yeah, I get that's in our binder.
I'm trying.
So go ahead, let's do it.
I just want to be clear that, so I know the second part of that motion was, of course, we would come back with the formal action to potentially leave the COG should it
Well,
fail, yeah.
But,
So it wouldn't be executing. Got
We
it.
have, this has to be submitted then by Monday of next week, so we won't hear this again until, well, just leave it at that.
But when you submit it to them, I guess what I was thinking, when you submit it to them, that they would know that that's our offer. That's,
Well, the only thing is, I think with other cities, if we're using a population before COVID, when a lot of cities may have lost population, there's no point in going to 2017, especially when these figures are not the same as what the Department of Finance has on their website for 2017. It's inaccurate.
I would request the mayor call for a vote, please.
I would accept that. Actually, is that that's a motion in itself.
yeah,
isn't
call
it?
for a vote. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so you can call for a motion to end debate, or you can just call for the vote as the mayor's prerogative.
Okay, I'm going to call for the vote myself then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oppose, yes.
Okay, opposed, no. Okay, thank you. All right, motion passes. Okay, there was something else on,
So can we
Is there a closed
define
session?
what the motion is?
There's not, okay.
I'm good, I have it.
We just have one item under matters from staff.
can you restate the motion?
I can try.
I think Mr.
So
Donegan.
the motion, we have a variety of things written here, but the motion was that whatever calculation we come up with that is less than $1,000 or a not to exceed of $1,000, that would be approved. That calculation, based on what the city manager just showed, was a dues divided by population, which comes out to roughly, on rounding up, 0.48. Or 0.472 if we were being very specific. If that proposal to the COG is not accepted, then the city of Rolling Hills would opt to drop out of COG membership.
Correct, so just, we would bring something back, and the proposal, as Mr. Mayor said, would be based off of the population.
By the way, our membership is valid through the end of June, I believe. So if
Correct.
they say no, and then they have an opportunity to change their mind at a later point before the membership is over. Okay,
The .472 is not the figures that are on here, that's the problem. That is, .472 is based on what the accurate figures are from Department of Finance for January 2022. So that's what I'm trying to find out, because if you're basing what the ultimate, because the figures used from the 2017, that resulted in 1,695, or that was with Mayor Wilson's proposal. So,
Right, but Mr. Mayor's, your proposal was not what the one that Mr. City Clerk just posited. What the proposal is that there is a calculation based off of the population of the city, and then, of course, the population of the COG as a whole, and provided that calculation results in a dollar figure of $1,000 or less, that is this council's direction to us tonight.
well, okay, but.
We voted on
it.
Correct.
No, but the population, he had the population.
Right, but-
of 2022.
Sure, but it doesn't,
If
yeah.
we're gonna use the COGS numbers.
Right. To do, yeah,
I'm not
once
sure
again,
where
the,
that's
They're not as
yeah.
accurate possibly, but we already agreed with
Right.
these.
Whatever the population numbers are, it's not irrelevant because there's a top dollar amount, but that's just what it is. So it's based off of the population, and if that happens to be $1,000 or less,
Elaine, when you were quickly doing the math over there so that we could understand, to make sure we were doing the right process, when you used the total head count, or the total population, into the total amount of money they were trying to raise, did it come somewhere in that 47, 48, yeah,
That's why her
that,
number's
that's
not
what I thought.
47, hers is 48.
Yeah,
because she-
right, so I just wanted to
Sure.
make sure that we were using the consistently and that we're still, because B was saying that it would be different, it might, that 47
Well-
cents was a different number, so I'm good with this. I got it.
Okay,
Got
so
it.
that figure that's highlighted on the table
Right.
is the summation of the membership city population. You can see in the spreadsheet, I just took the 488, 536, which is the dollar figure they want to achieve, divide those two, that's 48 cents, if you want to round it off, and then it comes out to $931. Okay.
All right, I just wanted to check for,
So where's the 48 cents come from? I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm gonna be the one at the cog.
Yeah, that's,
We're on the next item, please.
No, I'll be the one.
Well, I'll be here at the cog too, Pat. I'm not saying you're not gonna be there. I'm just trying to figure it out myself so I understand.
Councilmember Derringer, is that top figure, 488, 536, divided by 1,017,441.
Oh, I see, using that old population.
Okay, we're moving on to matters from staff.
Yes, just quickly, the LA County Fire Department put out public notices specific to the annual brush clearance, and those notices had some information that was incorrect in them. So the Peninsula cities put together a flyer that corrected that information, and we released that as a special newsletter last week, which you should have gotten hopefully by Saturday. So I just wanted to point out to you and the public that the special newsletter is out there, and it does have the correct information for this year's annual brush clearance.
I have a copy of the blue newsletter that went out on the dais.
and we did get it for the weekend.
Anyone else?
For council matters?
Work?
Well, we're still in.
That matters from staff.
Well, we didn't finish
Did I miss you?
city. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry. Sorry, I mean, I didn't hear any call. Okay, just quickly, just gonna, I know we're gonna treat it in more depth in the next, meeting, but just want to give a short report that, at the Palos Verdes Peninsula Public Safety Committee last Thursday at 3/9, my motion that the committee investigate having a mass notification siren system for the peninsula and have staff make a report on that to investigate it further was unanimously approved, and so it's going to be brought up again in the future. And then the other thing is in terms of requesting a matter for city council, we just got an email from our city manager indicating that essentially our ordinance in which we are supposed to approve any type of new cellular equipment that's put in and make sure that it's warranted. We have a criteria in our ordinance that there was a interpretation from the city manager that this should only apply to new facilities and not to any, I guess, modifications or additions to existing facilities. But my understanding was that it was for all types of plans that what they're trying to add to the existing facilities or put a new facility that we were supposed, our ordinance would kick in. So I wanted to inquire on that because it appears that that's going to be something that's going to be ruled on within the city shortly. So that's something I wanted to.
So I would ask our city attorney to comment on that.
sure, so,
It's,
yeah.
I don't know how it's written in the ordinance, because is new, does that mean a new box? Does that mean a different box with new equipment in it, but it's the same physical, appearance? I don't know what that means.
correct, yeah, so in the area of wireless facilities, there is not maximum, but there's a decent amount of federal preemption. That as long as you kind of fit some criteria, the city has very, very limited ability to deny it or anything like that. If our ordinance, if an interpretation of our ordinance conflicts with that, of course, we are going to interpret our ordinance to be consistent with federal law and not the other way around. I can't speak to this specific case that Councilmember Derringer is bringing about right now. I know myself and John in our office have been in contact with various other wireless facilities. We have a team of people at BB&K who that's kind of all they do. And so if a wireless provider were to show up with an application that kind of checks all the boxes of a federal, based on the federal law, there's limited amount that we can do. It's hard for me to pontificate on every single iteration, because of course, you're right, if they make it taller or wider, we may have some leeway, but if they're, my understanding, if they kind of keep it in the same casing and kind of exactly how it is, we have very, very limited discretion, limited, ability whatsoever to stop them from updating their facilities.
I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there's been claims that the city is obstructing the upgrading of the cellular system, preventing the association from moving forward. So that's been circulated, and I think most of us as council members are going, what? There's nothing before us that we know of. I mean, nothing's been brought to a council meeting for us to discuss, so.
Correct. Now,
that's
that's,
the
once again,
basis for this.
that's the first I'm hearing of that. I'll be sure to work with John on that. I mean, we do have application requirements, so someone can't just show up and say, hey, I'm gonna do some stuff over there, and we'll say, no, what are you doing? Please provide us all the required information. But I'm not aware of us, I mean, if we were holding them up, that we could potentially run into some issues. So I'm not aware of that, no, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I guess I was questioning because there was noted in this email that just came right before the meeting that John had indicated he had been advised by the city attorney's office to interpret the antenna replacement by this company called Infinigy as new facilities, and they want to make modifications to 16 locations within the city. So that's all I wanted to make sure that we are looking at it with respect to our ordinance, because I don't know how large or big or what the modifications consist of, but my understanding had been previously that any of this, it just goes through our processing to make sure that it meets the criteria we have, and not that we're holding it up, but we're just making sure legal considerations are being met by the ordinance.
We'll be sure to look into it.
Okay. Well, sorry I left you off that. Any other matters from council members before we go on to matters from staff, which we already went to? We'll conclude that if there's no other matters from staff. Hearing none. We're not having a closed session, so we won't be reconvening, and be adjourning the meeting at 8:50, well, 8:57.
Right.
Thank you all.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you.
See, don't you want to be, Craig, and govern?